I don't remember much about the moment they told me, just the weightless silence in my ears, like the world went underwater. "Grandma left you the vase," Aunt Michelle said, her eyes too quick to meet mine. She placed it on the table, like she was setting down a chipped souvenir from a thrift store. A vase. That's what I got after caring for Grandma for 3 years. After sitting at her bedside every Sunday. After leaving university 1 semester shy of my degree to help her when the stroke hit. After feeding her, bathing her, listening to her slurred stories about the war and the women she outlived. They gave me a vase. And the rest? Michelle got the house. Uncle Peter got the cabin and Grandma's savings account. Even my younger cousin Tyler got a vintage Rolex. He'd only ever visited Grandma twice in the past 5 years. Me? Just porcelain and dust. They said it with pity in their voices, but I could feel the smugness underneath. That kind of fake sympathy you get when someone wins and still wants to pretend they're the better person. I nodded, staring at the swirling blue and gold patterns on the vase. It was heavy, awkwardly cold. "We were surprised too," Peter added, straightening his already perfect tie. "She always talked about how close you two were, but I guess it's what she wanted." Bullshit. I drove home with the vase in the back seat, sitting like an accusation. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't say a word. Not even when Michelle hugged me too tightly at the door like she was grateful to be rid of me. But my mind wouldn't stop. I remembered the time Grandma squeezed my hand after her second stroke, blinking twice. Our code for help me. I remembered her looking past Michelle when she entered the room, and the way her mouth would twist when Peter bragged about his new vacation home. She wasn't a fool. She'd hated how they ignored her. How they talked to her like a child once she couldn't walk. So why would she leave everything to them? That night, I placed the vase on my tiny kitchen table, staring at it like it would blink. It didn't match anything in my studio apartment. Too elegant, too quiet. It belonged in her sunlit hallway, next to the window she liked to sit beside. I opened the cupboards, half thinking I'd just smash it out of spite. But something about it made me hesitate. I turned it over slowly, felt around the base. There, a thin, almost imperceptible bump beneath the glaze. Heart thudding, I took out a flashlight and angled the light across it. A seam. I grabbed a knife and carefully pried along the edge. The lid popped open, a hidden bottom. Inside, wrapped in layers of faded tissue, was a folded envelope. Yellowed, fragile. On the front, in Grandma's curling script. To be opened only by Claire. My name. Inside was a handwritten will, dated 6 months before the one the lawyer had read. This one didn't divide her assets equally. It named me as sole heir. The house, the cabin, the savings, the insurance, the safety deposit box, all of it. And at the bottom, a signature. Witnessed by her old friend Beatrice, and the notary I remembered visiting her on her birthday last fall. It was real. And they had lied. They'd buried this. Or maybe they never knew. Maybe Grandma had kept it hidden from them on purpose. Either way, I had proof, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I barely slept that night. The envelope sat on my kitchen table, opened but untouched, like it might vanish if I blinked. I'd read it a dozen times, checking and rechecking the date, the witness signatures, the precise language. I leave my entire estate to my granddaughter, Claire Elise Harrow, in gratitude for her unwavering love, time, and sacrifice in my final years. It was her handwriting. I knew it like I knew my own. She had this old-school elegance, even in her strokes. I could see the way her hand shook in the last few lines. But she meant it, every word. And somehow, that meant more than the money. For the first time since that awful day at the lawyer's office, I felt my throat unclench. I hadn't imagined our bond. I wasn't crazy for thinking she loved me most, because she did. And she'd tried to make it right, even if they buried her truth. The next morning, I made 3 calls. Beatrice Mullen, Grandma's best friend and bridge partner. Tom Lewin, the notary I remembered visiting last fall. James Whitby, an estate attorney. Not the same one my family used, someone I could trust. All 3 confirmed what I feared. Yes, Beatrice said over tea that afternoon. She made that will in my living room. She was livid after Michelle told her she'd be better off in a home. Said she wanted to make sure her heart went to someone who had one. Tom the notary confirmed the signing. Yes, Claire, it's legitimate. That will is valid. If they presented a newer one without contest, and yours was never filed, well, you've got a fight. But a real one. A fight. I sat with that word for a long moment. Not just a legal one. This was war. I showed the will to James Whitby later that week, tucked inside a plastic sleeve. He read it in silence, then looked up with quiet calculation. You're not crazy, and you're not powerless. This will holds up, especially if we can prove she was of sound mind and not under duress. And I know a handwriting expert who can testify. What happens now? His smile was razor thin. Now, we dig. I kept everything quiet. Let Michelle and Peter think I was licking my wounds. Let them smirk behind my back at Sunday dinner. I didn't go, but I knew from Beatrice that Michelle had already moved some of Grandma's jewelry into her bedroom. I also knew Peter had contacted a real estate agent about the cabin in Vermont. They were moving fast. Good. Let them hang themselves. I started collecting dark emails, texts, voicemails, photos. Beatrice had one of them sitting on the couch, will open, her dog sitting on Grandma's lap while she signed it. I requested Grandma's medical records from her physician. She had passed every cognitive exam until just 2 weeks before she died. Her lawyer, the one they'd used for the contested will, claimed the original had gone missing. I knew better. They'd found the vase, and they'd ignored it, or worse, they'd opened it and chose to bury the truth. 2 weeks later, I had everything I needed. James filed a motion to contest the current will and submit the older one, mine, for validation. He scheduled a preliminary hearing for probate court. Michelle didn't even bother to call. Instead, I got a letter. Not from her. From her attorney. We believe this claim is without merit. The family has already processed the estate in good faith. Further escalation will result in countersuit. I almost laughed. They were scared. They should be. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't just here to win. I wanted them to feel it. The way I felt. Alone. Discarded. Humiliated in front of strangers. Handed a worthless vase. Like I didn't matter. So I waited for the perfect moment. The following weekend, Michelle threw a garden party at Grandma's house. It was a full catered event. She posted about it with hashtags like Choir Fresh Start and Blessed New Chapter. She even wrote some sentimental caption about carrying forward family legacy and light. I smiled, because I was about to turn her fairy tale into a footnote. I dressed in all black, not mourning, power. And just as the guests were sipping rosé and nibbling canapés in the backyard, I walked through the front gate with James and a probate server. I handed her the legal packet in front of 30 stunned guests. Just loud. Enough to say, "Here's Grandma's real will, Michelle, the one you never thought I'd find." Her face paled. Her hand shook. And her perfect little party collapsed. Michelle didn't scream. She didn't throw the papers or accuse me in front of her curated audience. No, she was too calculated for that. Her rage surfaced in quieter ways. Her mouth tightened, her wineglass trembled, and her cheeks, usually powdered into perfection, went visibly pale. "What is this?" she asked through clenched teeth, her eyes darting from the thick envelope to my attorney beside me. James, ever composed, offered her a curt nod. "A legal contestation of the will filed in probate court. Claire Harrow is the sole heir in the most recent legitimate version. We've also included the witness affidavits, medical confirmations, and notarized evidence." Michelle blinked twice, still trying to compute. "This has to be a mistake." I took a step forward. Not loud, not cruel, just steady. "It's not. Grandma didn't forget me. You just hope she did." By the time I turned to leave the party, half the guests were whispering. I didn't stay long enough to hear the excuses Michelle would try to spin, but I knew what would happen, what had to happen. The moment the legal challenge became real, the mask would start to crack, and I was right. The very next day, my phone blew up, texts from Peter, ranging from patronizing. "This isn't what Grandma would have wanted. Let's talk this out like family," to threatening. "You think this won't blow back on you? You're burning bridges over something that isn't even guaranteed." Then a voicemail from Michelle that was more polished but colder than ice. "If you think dragging us through court will end well for you, think again. You don't know what you're doing." But I did. For once in my life, I did. The court set a date for the preliminary hearing. A month away. Long enough for them to scramble. And me? I dug in deeper. With James's help, I pulled Grandma's old voicemails from her landline. Recordings I'd helped set up 2 years ago when she kept forgetting to return calls. Dozens of messages from me checking in, reading her books over the phone, even just saying goodnight. And only 2 from Michelle in the past year. Both barely a minute long, one asking for a loan. I also found the note Grandma had written me before, her stroke, folded in a cookbook, thanking me for staying that awful winter. "I don't know how I got so lucky to have you," she'd written. "One day, I hope I can give you the same safety and peace you've given me." I submitted it all. Every line, every photo, every quiet proof of love. But it wasn't just about court anymore. It was about the rot underneath. Because as the pressure mounted, secrets began leaking. And not just from me. A week before the hearing, I got a call from a woman named Teresa Calloway. I didn't know the name, but her voice trembled. "Is this Claire Harrow? I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I have something you should see. I used to clean for your grandmother, and I overheard something a few months ago. Your Aunt Michelle. She was talking to someone about getting rid of a document in the house. She said it was too risky to leave it lying around." I didn't know what it meant until now. She sent me a copy of her statement, already notarized, and a screenshot of Michelle's text message asking her to dispose of that old box in the laundry room the day after Grandma's funeral. That's when I knew. Michelle had seen the vase, and she chose to pretend it meant nothing. Peter cracked first. 2 days before court, James received a call from Peter's lawyer offering a partial settlement. My client is willing to relinquish the cabin and the vehicle in exchange for no further legal action or public statements. I told James to decline. I didn't want a piece of what was mine. I wanted the truth acknowledged, out loud, on record, for everyone to see. Michelle? She went silent. No texts, no calls. But I could feel her working behind the scenes, tightening her grip. She always believed appearances were everything. She didn't know yet that I'd already spoken to the journalist from the Courier-Sun, a soft profile piece on contested wills and generational wealth. They were publishing it the day before court, and they were naming names. The night before the hearing, I drove past Grandma's house. The curtains were drawn, lights off. A for sale sign had been placed hastily in the yard, but it looked like it had been pulled down and thrown into the hedges. The house looked empty, soulless, like the people trying to sell it. I didn't get out. I just sat there for a while, gripping the steering wheel, letting the ache in my chest bloom. Then, pass. This was where she'd raised me after Mom left, where we baked bread on snow days and danced to her old records in the kitchen, where I'd cried into her lap after my first heartbreak. They could keep the bricks and wood, but I was taking everything else back. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and paper. I sat in the hallway outside room 206, suit pressed, hands folded, neatly in my lap, trying to pretend my stomach wasn't twisting into knots. James sat beside me, calm as ever, a manila folder on his knee labeled Harrow Estate Contestation in tidy block print. Inside was everything: witness statements, notarized documents, medical records, Grandma's original will, and Teresa Calloway's affidavit. Across the hall, Michelle and Peter waited. Michelle wore a navy pantsuit with a pearl brooch I recognized from Grandma's jewelry box. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Peter looked older, drawn, his tie slightly askew. I didn't flinch when the bailiff opened the door and called our names. I stood, and I walked through it. The room wasn't dramatic, just a long oak bench, polished floors, and a judge with a kind but unreadable face behind wire-rim glasses. We each had 10 minutes to present. James went first. He spoke in quiet, devastating precision, painting a picture of a granddaughter who gave up her education and years of her life to care for her grandmother, only to be handed a vase. He read from Grandma's letter, the will, the timeline of events, showed photos of me and Grandma together over the years, played a voicemail, where her voice clearly said, "Claire, darling, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I hope one day you'll know how much you've meant to me." He ended with a copy of the notarized document and the witness statement from Teresa, highlighting the message about disposing of documents. I kept my eyes forward, hands still, jaw set. Let them speak next. Michelle's lawyer rose like he was stepping onto a stage. "We do not contest the closeness between Claire and the deceased, but we believe this so-called will was created under duress, or possibly during a period of diminished capacity, and if not, its sudden appearance, conveniently after the estate has already been processed, raises significant concerns regarding its validity and the motivations behind it." He gestured to me. "We ask the court to consider whether this is an act of grief or of opportunism." James stood calmly. We anticipated that claim, Your Honor, and we have a licensed neurologist's written statement confirming that Mrs. Evelyn Harrow was cognitively sound at the time of signing. Additionally, her original notary and 2 witnesses, one of whom is unrelated to any party, have confirmed its legitimacy. The vase was not found late by accident. It was intentionally hidden. He paused, looked at me, because she knew her family would ignore her final wishes. The judge asked a few questions, clarifying the date of signing, the timeline of the will filings, and if any coercion had been reported by the notary. All answers supported us. Michelle shifted in her seat, jaw tightening. Peter rubbed his forehead. I saw it, the moment it hit them that they might lose. Then the judge closed her binder and said, "This case warrants a full hearing. All parties will be summoned again within 30 days for an official ruling. Until then, any sale or transfer of assets relating to the Harrow estate is frozen. That includes the house, cabin, savings accounts, and any personal property exceeding $1,000 in value." A silence fell over the courtroom like frost. The gavel hit the wood, and for the first time in a month, I exhaled. Outside, Michelle caught up to me. Her voice was tight, controlled. "You think you're better than us, Claire? You think Grandma would have wanted this circus?" I turned. "No," I said. "She would have wanted you to act like family, not like thieves." She tried to smile. "You'll regret this." "Not as much as you're about to." I walked away. The story hit the Courier-Sun front page that afternoon. Forgotten granddaughter fights back after surprise. Will surfaces. With a photo of Grandma and me at her garden, taken just a year before she passed, our hands clasped, her chin resting on mine. The article quoted Beatrice and Teresa. And even Dr. Patel, Grandma's physician, the comments were brutal. "How do you steal from someone who gave you their last years?" Team Claire all the way. Blood doesn't mean anything without loyalty. They gave her a vase. Disgusting. The public was watching now. And Michelle? She hated being watched. That night, I got a text. From unknown. "We need to talk, alone." It was from Peter. I almost didn't respond, but something told me. He wasn't calling to threaten me. He was unraveling. The cafe was mostly empty when I walked in. Dim lights, a flickering candle on each table, and a single guy in a hoodie glued to his laptop near the window. Peter was already seated in the back corner, nursing a coffee and looking 10 years older than he had a month ago. He stood awkwardly when he saw me. "Claire." "Peter." No hugs, no fake warmth, just tension. I slid into the booth across from him and folded my hands in my lap, waiting. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes rimmed red, jaw unshaven, hair uncombed. Not the crisp country club uncle who wore cologne and bragged about investment returns. This man looked hollow. "I didn't know about the vase," he said first. I didn't respond, just raised an eyebrow. He sighed, leaning forward. "Look, I didn't come here to lie. I came to tell you I'm done protecting Michelle." Now I leaned forward. She found the vase the night of the funeral. Told me it was just some old junk. I didn't question it. Not until weeks later, when I noticed the safe deposit key was missing from Grandma's desk. Michelle told me Grandma must have thrown it out, but she was acting strange, paranoid. And then when the will turned up, I started putting things together. You helped her anyway, I said, tone even. His eyes dropped. I thought the will we filed was the last one, that it was legit. I figured Grandma must have changed her mind. I didn't want to dig. And now? He looked at me, defeated. Now I think we stole from her, and from you. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a USB drive. What's this? Security footage, from Grandma's house. Michelle had it wiped after the funeral, but I made a copy. The night before she died, she recorded a video. Something like a goodbye. She talks about the will, about you. She left it in the drive, but Michelle deleted it after transferring the money. My breath caught. Does it show her signing? Anything? No. But it shows she meant it. I stared at the tiny silver drive, heart pounding. Why are you giving this to me? Peter shrugged. I don't know. Maybe because you deserve it. Maybe because I'm tired. Maybe because if this goes any further, I'll be subpoenaed, and I'd rather be on the right side when it happens. He stood to leave, but paused, voice lower now. She really did love you, Claire. She talked about you all the time. I think she wanted you to fight for this, even if she didn't say it out loud. Then he left. I watched the video that night. Grandma was in her favorite armchair, blanket tucked around her legs, soft classical music playing faintly behind her. Hello, Claire Bear, she said to the camera, smiling weakly. I started to cry. I don't know if I'll get to say everything I want to say in person, so I'm saying it here. I hope you never have to watch this, but in case things get complicated, I wanted you to know. Everything I did for you. She coughed. A raspy, struggling sound, but continued. You gave me back my dignity when everyone else started talking around me like I was a child. You saw me when I felt invisible. I'm leaving the house, the cabin, the money, all of it, because I know you won't waste it. You'll build something real. Her eyes glistened. And Claire, if they try to stop you, don't let them. I submitted the footage the next morning. James was stunned. This is gold. The judge can't consider it as formal proof of the will's legality, but it's powerful supplementary evidence. The emotional weight alone, it changes everything. He contacted the court. We filed an emergency motion to include the video as supporting evidence in the upcoming hearing. Michelle's lawyer responded the same day. Not with a denial, but a request. My client is willing to offer a revised settlement. Full rights to the Vermont property, 75% of the savings, and sale proceeds from the main house, contingent on mutual NDA. James looked at me over his glasses. You want it? I shook my head. No, I want it all. The next few weeks were a flurry of strategic strikes. The article had gone viral. A second piece followed, this time quoting an anonymous former neighbor who overheard Michelle yelling that Grandma wasn't in her right mind anyway. I didn't plan it, but I didn't stop it either. By the time the full hearing arrived, public opinion had shifted completely. Michelle showed up without her usual smugness. Her lawyer spoke quickly, nervously. The judge listened, nodded, and then asked to view the video in full. Everyone in the room watched as Grandma's final words played again. Not legal testimony, but love, intent. A grandmother speaking truth from beyond the grave. When the video ended, the judge folded her hands. This court will reconvene in 5 days to deliver its ruling. And this time, Michelle didn't even look at me. She just stared straight ahead, like a woman already drowning. The courthouse felt different this time. Not quieter, but expectant. Like something had shifted in the air. Michelle sat 2 rows ahead of me in the gallery, stone-faced, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles were pale. Peter wasn't with her. I'd heard he'd quietly withdrawn from the legal proceedings after submitting a statement verifying the USB drive's authenticity. Think he knew how this was going to end. So did I. But hearing it aloud? That would be the justice I needed. Not just for me, but for Grandma. The judge entered without ceremony, took her seat, looked over the bench. Her tone was crisp, but clear. In the matter of Harrow versus Harrow et al., regarding the contested will of the late Evelyn Harrow, I clenched my fingers in my lap. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Claire Elise Harrow. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped like a flood. The judge continued, unfazed by the ripple of murmurs in the courtroom. The evidence submitted, including dated medical assessments, notary verification, witness testimonies, and additional video material, strongly supports the validity of the handwritten will, dated 6 months prior to the one previously filed. It is therefore the decision of this court that the more recent handwritten will is the legally binding expression of Mrs. Harrow's final wishes. I barely heard the rest. Something in me had gone still. Not numb. Calm. Like for the first time in months, the storm had passed. Outside, a camera crew was waiting. I didn't speak. James gave the statement on my behalf, carefully polished. This ruling honors not only our client, but the wishes of a woman who made her voice known, and should have been heard long before today. I stood behind him, head high, shoulders back, staring forward while Michelle brushed past me, shoving on her sunglasses. "You'll regret dragging this through the mud," she hissed, low and bitter. I didn't respond, because I didn't need to. The truth had already done the talking. I didn't go back to the house right away. I let the lawyers handle the locks, the listings, the bank transfers. I didn't want the money. I wanted closure. But I did return to one place. The backyard garden, Grandma's favorite place in the world. The weeds had grown thick, and the roses were choking under overwatered soil. The wind chimes she loved were tangled and silent. But as I pulled back the dead stems and wiped the grime from the stone bench near the bird bath, I found something carved into the wood slats. It was faint, hidden by age and weather. For Claire, who never left me alone. My throat closed. Up. That was her. That was everything she never got to say out loud in court or in her letters. But I heard it. Over the next month, I didn't just win back the house or the accounts or the keys. I reclaimed her legacy. I set up a small scholarship, fund in her name, for caregivers who left school or worked to care for sick loved ones. I hired a local artist to paint a mural inside the library she'd loved so much, and I sent Beatrice flowers every Sunday. Then one morning, I received a package. From Peter. No note. Just a small wooden box and a stack of old photographs. Inside, the box was the pearl brooch, the one Michelle used to wear, the one that belonged to Grandma. And inside the lid, Peter had scribbled just 4 words. You were always hers. The press eventually moved on. So did the whispers. But I didn't. I stayed in the house for a while. Repainted the kitchen in the soft lavender Grandma loved, put her old records back on the shelf. Cooked her chicken soup from memory, even though I never got it quite right. Some days I sat by the window with the vase, that vase that started it all, now polished and filled with fresh tulips. I'd lost time, peace, pieces of myself in that courtroom war. But what I'd gained wasn't money. It was something rarer. Proof that love, when real, leaves a trail stronger than lies. 3 weeks after the ruling, I got a message request on Instagram. Michelle Lorhero, 87, unread. I stared at it for a moment before clicking. Just a short line of text. Happy now? Hope it was worth it. That was all. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just bitterness, sealed in a screen. I didn't respond. She could rot in that silence for the rest of her life. The fallout came fast after that. Michelle's image, so carefully curated with garden parties and charity brunches, started to unravel. Word got around in town, not because I told anyone directly, but because people talk. Beatrice, Teresa, even some of Grandma's old friends from the church. The Courier-Sun ran a follow-up piece titled, Heir Restored, How a Forgotten Granddaughter Fought Back and Won. It mentioned the scholarship fund, the court ruling. It didn't name Michelle directly, but it didn't have to. The community knew. Her florist canceled a standing contract. Her name was dropped from a volunteer committee board. Even her yoga instructor left a snide comment on one of her passive-aggressive story posts. Hard to center your energy when karma is still in the room. Peter emailed me too. Not to apologize. Not exactly. Just a quiet update. He'd moved out of town. He left Michelle, and he signed over his remaining interest in the estate without asking for $1. Do with it what you think is right, he wrote. I should have done more. Maybe this is my start. It wasn't redemption. But it was something. I started visiting the Vermont cabin every other weekend. It was the only place that still felt untouched by all of them. A quiet log structure surrounded by trees and mist, exactly as Grandma had left it. I brought her old wool blanket, stocked the tiny pantry with her favorite tea, and carved out a desk space for myself near the window. Up there, the air was quieter, thinner, more forgiving. I wrote, I read, I healed. And one afternoon, while digging through the old storage trunk at the back of the closet, I found a box labeled simply, to be opened only by her. Inside was a stack of letters, all written to me, unsent, undated. Some started with Dear Claire, others with just a single thought. I wish I could see your face when you read this. I know what they'll try to do, but you're stronger than them. You're not forgotten. Never. I sat there for hours, reading each one. Crying sometimes. Laughing once, when I found a sketch of her middle finger aimed directly at a drawing of Michelle's face, done in ballpoint pen with the words, just in case, scribbled underneath. That was her. Spiteful in the most loving way. Back in Nye, Enner town, people had started to treat me differently, not with pity, with respect. Mrs. Langley, the post office clerk, smiled more now. Even called me Miss Harrow instead of just Sweetie. At the grocery store, the owner slipped a bundle of Grandma's favorite roses into my cart without charging me. Your grandmother meant a lot to this town, he said. Glad someone who actually cared is looking after her legacy. And the house, the main one, the one they tried to erase me from, became something else entirely. not a trophy, a place of memory, of grounding. I reopened Grandma's sewing room, turned the old guest room into a reading nook, restored her garden with the help of a few high school volunteers I hired from the scholarship program. They were shy at first. One of them, Ruby, even asked if I was the Claire Harrow from the article. I just smiled. I'm the one who got the vase. She didn't get the joke. Not really. But it didn't matter. Late one evening, I stood on the back porch overlooking the garden. The wind chimes were singing again. The tulips had opened wide. I held the vase in my hands, clean, polished, unhidden, the very thing they dismissed as worthless. I turned it slowly in the golden light, then placed it at the center of the garden table, where it belonged. Let it sit there for anyone to see, because it wasn't just a hiding place. It was proof that even in silence, Grandma had found a way to protect me, even when no one else would. Autumn came quickly that year. The leaves outside, Grandma's house, my house, had turned to rust and copper, blanketing the porch in crisp reminders of time passing. The light through the windows was soft now, tinted amber. Everything about the air felt quieter, settled. It had been 6 months since the ruling, 6 months since the storm passed. And somehow, I was still here. I stood in the kitchen, stirring, a pot of soup on the stove, the kind Grandma used to make when the days got short and the air smelled like rain and old leaves. I never did perfect her recipe, but I made peace with that. Maybe some things weren't meant to be replicated. Maybe some things just lived in memory. Across the room, the old radio played one of her favorite records. That slow, soulful melody that used to echo through the house on Sunday afternoons. The lace curtains fluttered in the breeze, and on the table sat the vase, still unbroken, still holding tulips, not as a relic, but as a reminder. Later that evening, I walked out into the backyard. The garden had bloomed back to life under careful tending. Ruby, the teen from the scholarship program, had taken over some of the heavier work. She was brilliant, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person Grandma would have adored. She came every Thursday now, not just to help, but to sit. We'd drink tea, pull weeds, talk about things that mattered and things that didn't, and every time she left, she placed one flower from the garden into the vase. Just keeping her close, she always said. She didn't need to know the whole story, but I think she understood it anyway. That night, as I locked the front door, I felt something shift. Not physically, but deeply. Like some part of me had finally exhaled. I went upstairs to the sewing room. Not to use it, just to sit. There on the windowsill, I'd framed one of the letters Grandma had written me. The one that ended with, "If you're reading this, it means you didn't give up. I knew you wouldn't. Love always wins in the end, Claire. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Below that, a simple photo. Me and her, side by side, laughing, unposed, unshaken. Michelle never reached out again. Last I heard, she moved to another state, sold the condo, scrubbed her social media clean. Someone messaged me once saying she was working part-time at a boutique and didn't like to talk about the past. Good. Let her live in her silence, because she'd already been written out of the legacy she tried to steal, not by lawyers, by love. I didn't end up selling the house. I kept it, restored it, filled it with life again. It wasn't just about the bricks or the deed or the garden she planted. It was about the story. The proof that even when people try to erase you, the truth leaves clues, in letters, in vases, in hearts that don't forget. I stepped outside one last time that night, the stars bright above me. The porch light hummed gently, and as I sat on the steps wrapped in Grandma's quilt, I realized something. I hadn't just gotten back what was stolen. I'd reclaimed who I was before they tried to take it. Not just the girl with the vase, but the woman who turned silence into justice.